Welcome back to Haunt Narratives. You know, uh, Tonight we're going deep. We're diving into the legend of the Candyman.
Oh,
Get ready, for chills because
right.
this is one of horror's most iconic figures.
Absolutely. The Candyman, I think, is much more than just a name whispered in front of a mirror. His story is really steeped in history, and it reflects some of the darkest aspects of our society.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just about the jump scares. There's real depth to his legend, a commentary on social injustice, the power of belief. It's truly haunting.
Exactly. To understand the Candyman, I think we have to go back to his origins, back to the man he was before he became the vengeful spirit we know and fear.
So, let's unravel the threads of this story. Who was this man? This man behind the monster?
His name was Daniel Robicheaux. He was a gifted African-American artist living in the late 19th century. Imagine a time when racial tensions were incredibly high. Segregation was the norm.
A time when, a black man daring to love a white woman, that was seen as a grave transgression.
Precisely. Daniel fell deeply in love with a woman. Her father was a wealthy landowner. He was enraged by their relationship.
Yeah.
Driven by hatred and prejudice, he hired a mob to punish Daniel for his audacity.
So this is where the story takes a truly horrifying turn, right? Because it's not just a story of forbidden love. It's a brutal reminder of the horrors of lynching in America's past.
The mob, a symbol of blind hatred and ignorance, they chased Daniel down, they brutally beat him. And as a cruel reminder of his talent, his artistic talent, they severed his right hand.
Oh, God.
The hand that created such beautiful works of art.
It's hard to even imagine the pain and humiliation.
But the mob didn't stop there. To add insult to unimaginable injury, they smeared his body with honey, attracting a swarm of bees that stung him relentlessly.
God, the imagery is so vivid, so unsettling. It speaks to the primal fear we have of bees, of being overwhelmed and consumed by a force we can't control.
Exactly, and it's a chilling reminder of the way black bodies were often violated and desecrated during this era.
His story doesn't end with his death, though, right?
Yeah. No, they burned his body on a pyre where the Cabrini Green housing project would later stand, forever linking his tormented soul to that location.
Wow. So Cabrini Green, a place already rife with poverty and violence, became the epicenter of his vengeful spirit.
It's as if the suffering, the despair of that place resonated with his own pain, amplifying his power, his rage.
So the man, the artist, was transformed into something monstrous.
Mm.
But why the name Candyman? Why Candyman?
That comes from the honey they smeared him with, this grotesque attempt to mock and dehumanize him in death.
The irony is almost unbearable. A talented artist, reduced to a symbol of fear and disgust. His name twisted into a moniker of horror.
And that's what makes the Candyman such a potent figure. He's a reflection of our own capacity for cruelty, a reminder of the sins that haunt our history.
His story forces us to confront the darkness that lies, beneath the surface of our society. But there's another element to this legend, right? The way he's summoned. The power of belief that gives him form.
That's right. The Candyman exists because people believe in him. He's the whisper in the classroom, the shadow in the mirror, the embodiment of our deepest fears. And he thrives on fear, right? On the anticipation of his arrival. And that's where the ritual comes in. The act of saying his name 5 times in front of a mirror.
Yeah, that ritual, it's almost like a dare, a challenge to the unknown. It really taps into our morbid curiosity, our fascination with the forbidden.
Exactly. I think there's something deeply unsettling about mirrors, about the way they reflect our image back at us.
For sure.
Like portals to another world, a world where the line between reality and nightmare blurs.
And the act of repeating his name, it's like an incantation, a way of giving him power,
Yeah.
of making him real.
Think about it. It's not just about the words themselves. It's about the fear and the anticipation that build with each repetition. The way your heart races, the way your breath quickens as you approach that 5th and final utterance.
Yeah, you're almost willing him to appear, inviting him into your world. It's a terrifying thought, but there's a strange allure to it.
Right. There's a reason why this legend has endured for so long. It speaks to our primal fears, to the darkness that exists within us all.
And let's not forget about the Candyman's physical appearance. He's not just a shapeless specter. He has a very distinct look, a look that's both terrifying and strangely seductive.
Right. The long coat,
Yeah.
concealing the instruments of his torment.
Yeah.
But then there's the exposed chest, this raw vulnerability, almost inviting you to witness his pain.
And that hook. God, that hook. A symbol of both his power and his suffering.
Yeah.
It's a gruesome reminder of the violence inflicted upon him. But it's also a weapon. a tool for exacting his revenge.
Yeah, it's a brilliant visual element. Both horrifying and strangely alluring, it speaks to the duality of the Candyman himself, the way he embodies both the victim and the monster.
And then there are the bees, those swarming, buzzing insects
Yeah.
that seem to emanate from his very being.
The bees, I think, add a visceral layer to the horror. They represent the collective rage of the oppressed, the stinging pain of injustice.
They're a force of nature unleashed, a symbol of the way that violence and trauma can spread and consume everything in their path.
The Candyman is often portrayed as this tragic figure, a victim of circumstance, who is driven to madness by the cruelty of others. But there's also this seductive element to him, this dark charisma that draws people in.
Yeah, he's not just a mindless monster. He's a complex figure
Yeah.
with a depth of emotion that makes him even more terrifying.
There's a scene in the original film where he speaks about his pain, about how he was once a man who loved and was loved in return. And for a moment, you almost feel sympathy for him.
Yeah.
But then that moment passes and you're reminded of the violence he's capable of, the darkness that consumes him.
Yeah.
And it's that complexity, that blend of horror and tragedy that makes the Candyman such an enduring figure.
His story continues to resonate with audiences because it speaks to something deep within us, to the fear of the unknown, the power of belief, and the darkness that lurks at the edges of our society.
The Candyman legend has expanded over the years, hasn't it?
It has. There have been sequels that explore different facets of his story, taking the legend to new locations, introducing new characters.
And the 2021 film. That took a really interesting approach, didn't it?
It did. It reimagined the Candyman as a kind of collective entity, like a hive of vengeful spirits who were all victims of racial injustice, added a whole new layer of complexity to the legend, connecting it to a wider history of oppression, violence.
It's a powerful statement about the cyclical nature of trauma, how the sins of the past continue to haunt the present. And it reminds us that we can't just erase history, that the wounds of injustice run deep.
Exactly. Speaking of legacies, it would be remiss of us not to mention the man who brought the Candyman to life on screen, wouldn't it?
Indeed. Anthony Tirantod, so brilliantly embodied the Candyman, passed away just last week. He was a true icon of the horror genre, and his performance as the Candyman was both chilling and unforgettable.
That voice.
Yeah.
God, the way he delivered those lines, this blend of menace and sorrow, it was truly remarkable.
He brought a depth and complexity to the character. That went far beyond the script. He made the Candyman more than just a monster. He made him a symbol of the pain and suffering that can be inflicted by hatred and prejudice.
He will be deeply missed by fans all over the world, but his legacy as the Candyman will live on, continuing to haunt and inspire us for generations to come. It's hard to imagine anyone else, capturing that blend of menace and vulnerability the way he did.
Absolutely. He brought a certain, gravitas to the role, the sense of history
Yeah.
and weight that made the Candyman feel truly real, truly dangerous.
And it's interesting to think about, what draws us to these horror legends, these figures that embody our deepest fears. Why do we keep telling these stories generation after generation?
I think horror allows us to confront our fears, in a safe environment. It gives us a way to explore that dark side of human nature without actually putting ourselves in danger.
There's a thrill in testing those boundaries, peering into the abyss, wondering what might stare back. And with the Candyman, it's not just the fear of the unknown, right? It's the fear of our own history, the darkness that we're capable of as human beings.
He's a reminder that the past is never truly gone, that it can come back to haunt us in ways we never expect. He forces us to confront the ugliness within ourselves, to acknowledge the pain, the suffering that we've inflicted on others.
And that's what makes the Candyman such an enduring figure. He's
Wow.
not just a monster in a movie. He's a symbol of the very real horrors that exist in our world.
He challenges us to look in the mirror, both literally and figuratively, and ask ourselves some difficult questions. What do we see when we look at our reflection?
Yeah.
Do we see the face of fear, or do we see the potential for change?
Wow, what a chilling question to end on. It's a reminder that the Candyman story, it's not just about scares, it's about confronting the darkness within ourselves and within our society.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey exploring this legend with you.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of the Candyman. If you enjoyed this episode of Haunt Narratives, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment. And as always, thanks for listening.